What is good, everybody? Welcome back to Joint Dropper Sports. I'm your host, Sean T. Stewart, here to give you a breakdown of the quarterfinals and the upcoming semifinals. You listen to Joint Dropper Sports. Let's get it. So to start off with the quarterfinal, we didn't get a chance to record the full podcast, so I got to try to do it here for you guys. For the quarterfinal, Texas versus Arizona State. That game was one where I was very surprised by Arizona State and how they performed in that one. They performed admirably, well above and beyond where I thought they would. I thought there was going to be a huge gap in between what Texas would be able to do on the ground game, in which Arizona completely nullified that. I thought that Quinn Ewers wouldn't have to do a whole lot in order to win this game. I thought maybe 200 yards passing would be enough. He didn't necessarily play a great game until there at the end, but shout out to Kenny Dillingham, man, for what they've done at Arizona State. That team competed. They earned their way into this playoff spot. They were a team that I don't think many people thought much of prior to the Big 12 championship game. I know I didn't. But Cam Scatterbo, a guy that played a phenomenal game. A guy that literally did any and everything his team needed in order to keep them in the game and possibly win it. He played a nearly, I won't say flawless game, but even when the ground game wasn't there, they still found ways to get him going, and him still being able to capitalize and make plays for his team, even when the traditional run game wasn't there. It's nothing short of phenomenal. You start to see him. His style of play takes more of a toll on defenses as the game kept going along, and as the longer that game kept going, you started to see him be able to really impose his will. You saw Texas struggling to be able to find ways to get stops against him. But the biggest thing Texas was able to do was get stops in the red zone. Arizona State, if their red zone efficiency was at least 50%, they win that game by multiple scores. They had no issue moving the ball in between the 20s. 20-yard line, no issues whatsoever. But then when it came down to the red zone, you started to see that they just didn't have enough. And that's what happens when you're missing your star wide receiver. So there's no shame in that at all. But for me, Texas is one of those teams where I'm a little disappointed because I feel like they play with their food a little too much. They're too talented of a group to have teams hang around as much as they do. They did it against Clemson. Clemson almost came back and got them one. You did it against Arizona State. They almost got you, and they should have gotten you. I thought Arizona State outplayed you in that ball game until a late game surge by Quinn Ewers, which credit to him for sticking in there and staying in there for all four, because that is tough. Even when you're not playing well, it's hard to just all of a sudden turn it on. He turned it on at a very pivotal time for his team, so kudos to him. But Steve Sarkisian and his coaching staff, they got to find a way to hit the ground running. The team you have upcoming is not a team you can sit there and play around with and not be hitting on all cylinders going into that matchup. So that's just some of the things that I thought about the Arizona State and Texas matchup, man. Cam Scatterbo, one of those guys that I think his draft stock definitely rose. And for teams that are looking for running backs in about the second and third round, brother, Cam Scatterbo is a guy that he may not test well, he may not run a flashy 40, but that's a real deal football player that you want on your team at the NFL level, man. A guy that could very well be a great short yardage back, but to me gives me a similar burst as like a Jonathan Stewart back in his heyday at Oregon. I think if people go back and look at that, obviously Mike Allstott being that big bruiser type of back, but I think he's got a little bit more explosiveness than Mike Allstott. Definitely expect for him to be a solid pro at the next level. So then we go to Ohio State versus Oregon. This game, a game that I picked Ohio State, but I could not have foreseen them jumping out 34-0 before we ever saw Oregon show any signs of life. Ohio State is playing at peak level, peak form, and they had the best roster. Like that's something that we've talked about here in the previous weeks, that Ohio State clearly has the best roster in college football. It hasn't played the best football. That's been the issue. But now we're seeing that Chip Kelly and his offense is starting to take form, and you're starting to see them play. Oh wow, they're much more explosive. Getting it done in the ground game. Jeremiah Smith, hands down, the best receiver we have left in the college football playoff. And again, I'll reiterate it again. This kid will be the #1 receiver off the board in this year's draft. He is that type of guy. Julio Jones-esque. Terrell Owens-esque, big body guy, a lot, great vertical speed, great set of hands, can go up in there and make the catch at the highest catch point, and can run away from you if need be in an open field situation. So one of the best guys that we have in this playoff, man. Ohio State's the most dominant team that's left in the brackets, man. There is nobody, I think, that can touch them in terms of how they're playing. Oregon, on the other hand, not much really to say. I mean, they're just not built for what I think is this level of college football, man. Like we how many years do we have to see this? Do I think it's going to change now that they're in the Big Ten? I mean, no. They're still going to be good. They're still going to be they're always going to be a good program. Dan Lanning and his group just don't put together. I hate to say it, it's not enough NFL talent on the field when you face an Ohio State team. Like, I don't want to make this a damning point about Dan Lanning. I think you played what is the best collection of talent in college football this year. I mean, they paid for it. So I don't want to knock him. I just think that you just weren't suited to go up and win this game. You caught Ohio State in an early season game at home, and it took some different things to happen in order for you to win that game. So we know the margin of error was tight against his team, and when you don't have Evan Stewart out there playing, you only have Tez Johnson, and you don't have your starting running back. You are left with what you were left with, and you could not control the game. You could not dictate the game. You couldn't control the tempo of it. Not being able to lean on your ground game at all in this type of game, and allowing that Ohio State pass rush to just tee off. You weren't set up for success to win this football game, man. That's really all she wrote, man. I can't really say much else besides that. But moving on, we had Penn State versus Boise State. This game was I thought Penn State physically outmanned Boise State, which is what I thought. I thought Madsen, the quarterback for Boise State, played a much better game than maybe the box score would say. I think you would have had to watch that game, but they were in it. Boise State was in the game. They got down 14-0, but they battled and they were in it. They got the score to 17-14. Penn State with their running backs and their offense were able to continuously lean on Boise State and were able to ultimately just grind their way to a victory. Ashton Jeanty in that game, he never quite had his moment. Unlike Cam Scatterboo in the Arizona State-Texas game, Ashton Jeanty never got it going, never quite had the big play that could set his team up, and that's what they needed. They needed him to be the best player, and in my mind, I knew that the rushing total he would have to hit would have to be around 150 in order for them to have a shot in that game. If Ashton Jeanty runs for 150 yards in that game with how Madsen played at quarterback, I think you have a shot. You have a much better chance than what you were given in that one. Penn State, though, is a team that I think is offensively limited, and I think that's ultimately going to be their undoing once they get to play teams that are more explosive, teams that have better athletes. They haven't played a team that has a great set of athletes yet. You played SMU and you played Boise State. Now, I give credit to Boise State. They were much better than what I thought they would be going into a game like that. I just didn't think that relying on your passing attack is not what you're suited for. That isn't what you're made for. You're made to be able to run the ball. The type of weather you play in tells me that you have to run the football a lot, and they obviously didn't get the type of production that they needed that day. I think it was the better team won. No knock to Boise State and what they did, but the better team won that matchup, and it went how we all expected. Now, Georgia versus Notre Dame. This was a tricky one. Obviously, we knew Carson Beck was not playing, so we knew Georgia would be down their starting quarterback, and how would they adjust to that? But that wasn't even the issue to me in that game. The biggest issue was number 57, your left tackle, was a complete turnstile for 90% of the game. All the critical moments, you can go back and look at it. The critical tide turns in that game happened because of him. Happened because your offensive line play was not suitable enough to protect your backup quarterback. Gunnar Stockton, for what I thought for the most part, played a very efficient game. I thought he played well. I thought he gave Georgia opportunity after opportunity to be in the game. You couldn't run the ball. You couldn't run the football, though. And that was another surprise to me. Losing the line of scrimmage in that game was what truly told me everything that I needed to know. Notre Dame, from that point forward, once Notre Dame knew they could stop the run, and we're just going to tee off on your quarterback, and your offensive line cannot protect, it's what else is there? What else is there to do? What else is there to say? The receiving core for Georgia was exactly what I thought it was going into that game. The worst receiving core that we had left in the college football playoff, and that's including a banged up Arizona State receiving core, and that's including a Boise State receiving core. Georgia had the worst receiving group of all the teams left in the playoff in the quarterfinals. They missed big time opportunities. And when you have a backup quarterback in the game, and he's already facing pressure because the offensive line isn't playing well, and on top of that, your receivers cannot bail him out and make plays. There you go. This overall was a very disappointing season to me for Georgia. And one would say, like, bro, they won the SEC. How is that disappointing? This is not what I expected Kirby Smart's team to look like. And I had Kirby Smart and Georgia winning the national title going in, coming out of the preseason. I thought he would be ready to take the mantle now that Nick Saban's gone and dominate college football. But clearly the transfer portal's done damage to Georgia as well. And clearly they haven't done a great job of replenishing the talent that they once had. And I get it. Here's the thing. When you lose a guy like Ladd McConkey, you lose a guy like Brock Bowers to the NFL, it's hard to replace that. Typically, most teams don't. I've seen coaches do it, though. I've seen the elite coaches do that. And they replenish, and they reload, and they go right back gunning for the title. You didn't even win the title with that group last year. Now, you won 2 titles, obviously, with them. But with those guys being the best guys on your team, you didn't win the title last year. So, let that sink in. But credit to Notre Dame. Credit to Notre Dame's head coach. Credit to what they've done, believing in that program and not, feeling like you got to go run somewhere else where more talent is, a.k.a. Brian Kelly. They deserve a lot of credit for that. They were able to win the line of scrimmage. They were able to nullify Georgia's pass rush and what Georgia did best, which was get after the quarterback by running their quarterback, Riley Leonard. And it's a lot different, right? So, like, you weren't beating Georgia running east and west. Too many good athletes on the field. You weren't going to beat them going sideline to sideline. They went north and south, power for power. We're going to go man to man, and we're going to see what you guys have. Credit to them, because when you run your quarterback, now I've said this previously, and I'll say it again. When you get 11 on 11 hats, you force the defense to be perfect. If you're a efficient defense, or you're a well-rounded, technically sound defense, you're you have a chance against teams like that, but they get you out of your comfort zone. Because when you run Riley Leonard on quarterback powers, going north and south, running right into the teeth of the defense, you're not really expecting that. You expect the quarterback to maybe scramble around and try to beat you to the sideline, try to get upfield, but when he's running right at you, and we have it's hat on a hat, you got to be very precise, and it forces the defense to play perfect football, and which is where Georgia's a good defense, and Georgia's defense played well. It's not like Georgia's defense played bad in that game. But when they needed a drive, they were able to get one. When they needed to keep drives going, they were able to get that. And for the most part, I got to give credit to Notre Dame and their coaching staff and how they attacked that game. Like, I mean, we could go through and just look at it. The box score may not be the prettiest, but 37 carries for 154 yards, 4 yards a carry against that Georgia defense. Riley Leonard carried the ball 14 times for 80 yards. That's the killer. On those third and mediums, it becomes such a task to take on a guy like that, because we know the strength of his game is running the football. I mean, 15 to 24 for 90 yards and a touchdown, bro. Like, their passing game is no threat to you whatsoever. So that's, you feel me? That's kind of where we're at. But credit to Notre Dame, man. They deserve a lot of credit for what they were able to do. They are in a position. They have a matchup coming up that is favorable for both teams. It's going to be a knock 'em out, drag out fight for sure. But let's get to the semifinal. So, with Notre Dame and Penn State, this game is dead even. I don't know who to say. I'm going to come up with a team that I think is going to win, because I have to, for the people's sake. But when I'm talking about both of these teams, they're very similar. They're going to lean on their ground games, right? They're going to lean on their ground games. And how Notre Dame is going to do theirs is they're going to use their quarterback in their rushing attack. which for a good Penn State defense could cause problems for the same way it caused problems for Georgia last week. I expect to see a lot of Riley Leonard. Expect about 15 to 20 carries out of Riley Leonard. I don't think he's gonna have a day in the passing game at all. I just could not foresee that. Not with that, I mean, a play here or there, but the line of scrimmage. Can you win that? Can you get a hat on a hat? And can your best player make enough plays and do essentially what you did against Georgia last in your last go around. For Penn State, you talk about Drew Aller, you talk about what they do best. What they do best is still run the football. They're going to lean on their ground game to try to rush the daylight. Drew Aller, I think, is critical. Here's the critical part, right? Because these are two vastly different quarterbacks in the sense that Drew Aller is a quarterback. He's a pocket passer, drop back, can launch that thing 60, 70 yards, drop it in the bucket, right? You're going to need to be your best version of yourself as a quarterback in that game. Absolutely. Unless Penn State wins the line of scrimmage, right? If you're able to run the ball and able to balance out your attack, I think Penn State has no problem winning this football game. If it becomes a test of wills and you have to lean on your quarterback to make a play, is which quarterback do I trust the most? And if I'm being honest, right, Riley Leonard has done more for me to trust. Like, I know he can find a way to win one. Based off of how they play and their skill sets, Drew Aller should be the pick. Right? I think we all should agree on that. And with that being said, I'm going to go with Drew Aller and the Penn State Nittany Lions to win this game. They're going to meet their fate in the national championship game. They're going to get an opportunity to play for it all. James Franklin and his crew gets it done. But again, it's gonna be a game where it's gonna come. These are two very similar teams. These are two These are two northern teams with bruising offensive lines and bruising running backs. I believe Penn State has the edge. And I'm gonna take Penn State to win that game. Now, for the one that we're all waiting for real, Texas versus Ohio State, brand on brand, if you will. Ohio State's running this one. I ain't gonna lie. I got Ohio State running them out of the building. I truly do. Unless I see a different Texas team come out in the first half and play with a certain level of urgency that you need in these types of ball games, I got Ryan Day's group running through with it. Simple and plain. I got Ryan Day's, like, if I'm being honest, I got Ryan Day's group winning the national title. That's just where I'm at with it. Yeah, Ohio State's winning this one. I don't believe that much in Quinn Ewers. I think the game that Quinn Ewers played against Arizona State, while admirable in how he finished, what you did between quarters 1 through 3 that's gonna get you beat by 20. That's what's gonna happen. That's gonna get you beat by 20 if you start off that slow. When do we start to see the explosive playmakers on the outside for Texas? When do we start to see that running game that we saw in the first round against Clemson? When do we see that? Can you put a complete game together? That's the question for Texas. For Ohio State, man, Will Howard take care of the football. Feed your guys. I don't believe there's a corner left that can. I don't believe there's a secondary group left that can cover this receiving group that you have. Man, trust your guys. Hand off to Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson. It's too many guys to count. Too many guys to keep up with. I don't think they have a problem at all winning this football game, man. So, with that being said, this has been Gem Dropper Sports. I'm your host, Shanti Stewart. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I probably should have said this at the top, but I'll say it here. Like and subscribe to the channel. We restarted. We revamped. I want you guys to all be a part of what we're building here. And with that being said, I'm out.